and items that we offer for small businesses. But I wanted to introduce Stefan Rodriguez. He's here from the Rhode Island Business Coalition. He's asked us to partner today, and their group is wonderful over there. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them, but I will, before I get into the PowerPoint presentation, I will turn it over to Stefan to introduce himself and whoever else is on from his team. And then we also have Dan Horowitz here from the Rhode Island SBA, the Providence District Office, who's also going to talk about their programs as well. So Stefan, I'll let you say a few words.
Hi, everybody. Stefan Rodriguez. I'm on the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition Board. Just wanted to say hi and welcome everybody. We're really excited to have this conversation with Seed and with you all about financial assistance and access to finance. We heard loud and clear that it was something of interest for the small business community. So just looking forward to the presentation, and just a quick plug for the coalition. If you're not a member already, we're a great organization advocating for small businesses, serving as a connector, and really kind of a rallying group to galvanize support for small businesses. So quick plug, and then we can turn it over and get started.
All right. And Dan, do you want to introduce yourself too before we get started?
Sure. Thanks, Ange. My name is Dan Horowitz. I'm the Lender Relations Specialist for the Rhode Island District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. What that means is I work with entrepreneurs and businesses and people who want to start businesses, as well as banks and credit unions and community development groups such as Seed. Basically, I'm the interface between the two. When somebody has an issue with regulations, has a question on how they can obtain a loan financing, I often am the person that they call. And when banks, credit unions, and CDCs like Seed have issues or challenges with the regulations, they call me, and usually, Ange is kind enough to handle most of the problems herself, but others are a little bit more forthright with asking me to solve it or lose my head. Sometimes very challenging, right, Angela?
It is, yes. And we're here to help educate you and help you through and let you know the resources available to you. So thank you, Dan. And then Dan's going to talk about, he's going to kind of piggyback and talk about his programs as we go through our presentation. And I also wanted to introduce Kaitlyn Roberts. She's actually worked with Seed before. She is also on the board for the Rhode Island Business Coalition, and she's going to say a few words as well towards the end of the presentation. So Kaitlyn, I just wanted to introduce you. I don't know if you wanted to say anything to start.
No, we'll get to it. I'm excited to see the presentation too.
Perfect. So what we're going to do today, you have a great group of people here. Please feel free to ask questions. We're going to go through the presentation, and at the end, we're going to leave some time, about 15 minutes or so, for Q&A. So again, if you want to hold on to your questions and ask them, you can raise your hand at the end. And or put them in the chat. And Ashley, who's my counterpart here from Seed, she's going to be monitoring the chat. So if it's a question that we want to answer as we go, we certainly can do that. But we're definitely going to leave some time at the end for questions after the three of us kind of go through, our piece of it. So again, thank you guys for joining us. Just a show of hands. How many of you have heard of Seed Corporation before? Okay, so a lot doesn't seem like a lot from what I can see on my end. So just a little bit of background about Seed. So we're a small business lender. We finance both startup and existing businesses throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We have been around since 1982. Our office is based in Taunton, but we work, sometimes we'll do office space out of Commerce in Providence, but we're connected with a lot of different lenders throughout both states. Our loans are made for both pure startups and existing businesses. So if you don't have any financial history, we're able to assist. And we always like to have a conversation and kind of go through, if you are looking for financing, to let you know what our programs look like, what we'll require, and also to ask you questions to make sure that from high level you are eligible for our programs. So Seed is really here to assist when the bank cannot. So we either provide gap financing with a bank. If you're looking to buy a building, we'll partner with the bank. If you're looking for a small loan or a micro loan and you can't get traditional bank financing, that's typically where Seed comes into play. And we actually do require a bank decline for any request over 20,000. So we do require that you speak with your bank. And if you're looking for financing, the first place you should always go is to the bank or credit union you have an existing relationship with. If you don't have an existing relationship, we can always refer out to 3 different lending institutions. Having that small community bank really be your partner, even if they can't provide financing at the time. It's really important to the success of your business because ideally you want to become bankable down the line, whether it's a term loan or a line of credit. That relationship from the beginning is so important in the having a relationship with your lender. So we don't hold deposit accounts. We don't have personal loans or lines of credit. We just do term loans for small businesses. We receive our financing from the Small Business Administration through the microloan, 7A, and 504 program, but we also have other state and federal funding. So we'll kind of go into the different loan programs and what they look like and what we have to offer. But Seed reviews, we're looking similar to a bank. We need to see what your personal credit looks like. Do you have repayment ability? What's your cash flow for the business and personal side? What do you have for collateral? Are you buying a business? Are you buying equipment? I'm sorry, buying a building? Are you buying equipment? What other assets do you have available for the business? Do you own your personal home? It's very common on the commercial loan program to take a lien on a personal residence for collateral. We ask, we look at your contribution. If you're starting up, how much money do you have of your own available to put in? Typically, a lender is not going to provide 100% of the financing. They typically want to see that you have some of your own cash available and have some skin in the game. And, character to determining eligibility, working with you, transparency throughout the process. And so we do look at all the same things as the bank, but typically we can be a little bit more flexible. And we'll kind of go into that as well. But in addition to the small business, financing piece of it, we also provide technical assistance, which means we're here to educate you on our programs, what we look for, what the bank looks for, and help you prepare for financing. If you haven't been through that process, we help to educate you on what that process looks like so you can better prepare yourself when you do need financing. But we also connect you with our resource partners through the SBA, through the local community, through the state of Rhode Island. So we have so many resource partners available to refer you out to. A lot of them provide that free one-on-one business assistance and services, in addition to holding workshops on specific topics that can help your business start up and grow. So we try to always be that intermediary to help connect you with those specific services. So with that being said, I'm going to go into our microloan program. So as I mentioned, this program is available for startup and existing businesses. So ultimately, we get our funding from SBA and then we re-lend it out to businesses. The program goes up to $50,000. We have in-house, we call it a fast track up to $25,000. Honestly, it's the same amount of paperwork because it's SBA loans. So there's a lot of financials that we need, personal financial statements, all that. But the in-house, we approve it in-house versus going out to our committee. So it's a little bit of a faster approval process. But under this program, you'll see the use of funds here, working capital, leaseholds, machinery, equipment, furniture, fixtures, inventory, refinancing, business credit card debt. We can also do business acquisitions. The interest rate when we don't have a bank partner is 7%, and it's fixed for the term of the loan. And under the microloan program for SBA, we can go up to 7-year term. We can't go beyond that. Sometimes for a smaller microloan, if it's 10 or 15, a lot of times we'll do a shorter term, maybe 4 or 5 years, but it really depends on the situation. There's no prepayment penalty. You can pay it off early at any time. There's no fees associated with that. And the big thing for us, when we can finance a startup business with no financial history, but we do require a secondary source of income. So that means that either you as a business owner getting started or your spouse are keeping your jobs, continuing to work while the business gets up and running to help support your household debt and take on the new loan. We really struggle and are not able to assist businesses who are looking to get started and have no active personal income coming into their household. So that's a big thing for us. And then going on to our small loan program. So we, again, available for startup and existing businesses. Our loan amounts go higher. In Massachusetts, it's $350. In Rhode Island, it's $500. But it really depends on, we're typically not doing loans, to be fully transparent, of this size for a single business. We try to disperse our funds and because the lending amount depends on the funding that we have available. So as we go through the funds, we use that money up, and it's not always available until we start having repayments or we get another disbursement. So ultimately, the amount we're lending depends on money that we have available at that time through our other state and federal funding sources. We get funding from CDFI, we get funding from Commerce RI through the SBAT program and SSBCI program. We have EDA funding as well. So depending on the sources available, but also ties heavily to the number of jobs being created or retained for your business. Because we're economic development, that's really important for us. And we want to see that the money that we're giving ties into creating those or retaining those jobs for your business. But that's something we always talk about in our initial conversation. So same thing, use of funds. I'm not going to read those again. They're similar to the microloan. The only difference for the small loan program for the larger loans is that this program can be used to purchase commercial, owner-occupied commercial real estate. The microloan funds cannot be used for real estate. When we're providing financing under this program, if we're working with a bank, our interest rate drops to 6% and it's fixed for the term of the loan. Without bank participation, similar to like the microloan program, our rate is 7% fixed, again, for the life of the loan. No prepayment penalty. The terms for this loan, typically, if it's not involving real estate, is a maximum of 7 years. If we're getting a guarantee from SBA through the 7A loan program, we have the ability to go up to 10 years if the cash flow needs it. And then if you're buying commercial real estate, our term would be a 10-year term with a 20-year amortization, which means your payments are spread out over a 20-year term. But again, great. Anything under the small micro, there are no prepayment penalties at all. And then we have the SBA 504 program. So this is our commercial real estate, large fixed machinery and equipment program. Our loan can go up to $5.5 million for manufacturing businesses, $5 million for all other industries. But on this program, we always partner with the bank. So with this, the bank's providing typically 50% of the financing, seeds coming in and providing up to 40% if you're an existing business, and then your down payment would be as low as 10%. So this is a really great program if you're looking to buy a building that your business is going to operate out of and be the home for your business. So the big key factor for this program, because SBA really doesn't want to finance investment properties, they require that your business occupies 51% or more of the total square footage of that building. So you can have another commercial tenant. It can be a mixed-use property where you have a residential unit, but your business has to occupy 51% or more of that total square footage. And there's also debt refinance available under this program. So, conventionally, if you're looking to buy a building for your business, you're not going to find the low down payment of 10% really through any institution. Typically, their conventional down payments are 20-25%. But we can provide up to 90% financing to you, which allows you to reserve some cash. It's a great program. The bank sets their own rate and term. Seed comes in a second position on the property and sets our own rate and term, and then your down payment is 10. So there's a typical structure there. Our interest rate will be fixed for either 20 or 25 years for real estate. So whatever your rate locks in at the time we fund the loan with SBA, and that rate will remain for the entire term. The bank sets their own rate and term, as I mentioned. And then if you're looking to buy a large piece of equipment, this doesn't include rolling stock, so anything that has a license plate, but it could be a large pieces of machinery and equipment, printing equipment that has a useful life of 10 years or more and typically a value over $200,000. The term for that would be 10-year term. So going into those few items that I mentioned on the first slide about eligibility and what we look for. So anytime you're looking for financing, whether it's a $10,000 microloan or you're looking for $1 million commercial real estate loan, you always want to have a conversation with your lender, and we always will set those conversations up to discuss with you what we're going to be looking for. So we can make sure that, high level, that you are eligible, that you meet those requirements at a minimum. And then also so that you understand what we're going to be asking for to make sure it's a good fit for you and that you're comfortable with it. So just to get into a little bit more detail about the C's of credit. So personal credit scores for seed, every lender, keep in mind, every bank, credit union, non-traditional lender like seed, we all are looking at these C's of credit, but we all have a little bit of a different, what's called a credit box, which encompasses all of these items. So every lender has a different comfort level when it comes to financing a business. It could be that we have different personal credit scores, that we require minimums for, bankruptcy policies, what we want to see for repayment. Can we do startups or existing businesses, certain industries? So there's a lot of reasons sometimes why the bank can't help, or maybe one lender can, but another lender can't. So you always want to talk to a few and kind of figure out who the best fit is for you. It is common to hear no as well before you hear a yes for a loan. And I just like to try to normalize that sometimes you have to hear a couple no's before you hear a yes, or maybe give it some time. So that's very common. And just being able to educate yourself on what is the lender looking for? What can I do better? That will only help you to be more and well prepared down the line. So personal credit, once we receive an actual application, Seed will run your personal credit score for any owner, spouse if you're married, or guarantor of the loan. So we require a minimum of 600 on personal credit, but we're really focusing on the last 2 years to make sure there haven't been consistent late payments over that time. We really don't like to see a history of late payments. We don't want to see that there's anything currently past due. So if you have any, you should always be aware of what your credit score is and what's being reflected on your report. You can run your credit report at annualcreditreport.com and freecreditreport.com. So usually you can do that once a year to get the report to make sure that all the accounts belong to you. And you do want to have a rough idea of what your score is before you go for financing, because the lender's always going to be asking that. Anything past due, we want to make sure it's been satisfied and paid. If there was a life situation that happened, maybe an illness or somebody lost a job, there's so many things that can happen. And maybe there's a specific period of time that there were late payments and it makes sense to when you weren't working or whatever the struggle was at the time. Usually we can be pretty understanding of that. Our big thing is just seeing over a period of time that, there seemed to be a lot of late payments. And it seems to be a trend more than just a specific period in time. But always be honest and open with your lenders so that we can help advise you the best that we can. If we're doing a loan that is considered unsecured, which means we don't have real estate for collateral, we typically like to see that the minimum credit score is 680 or above. So because the loans are a little bit riskier, without having that collateral, we typically need to see a little bit better credit history for you. But we're always willing and able to look at the big picture. So we're always going to ask you those questions. If you filed for a bankruptcy, we must see that it's been discharged for 5 years or more. In terms of cash flow, which is also known as your repayment, Seed looks at a global repayment ability. So we consider all personal and business income and expenses. So this means that we're considering, if you're an existing business, we look at the business tax returns historically for the last 3 years. What have your financials looked like? We look at your personal tax returns for the last 2 or 3 years. We look at year-to-date income statements and interim statements for the business, and also your most recent, pay stub or wage for you personally. So we're looking at everything as a big picture. For us, when the businesses we're lending to, we typically find that your business is on such a small scale, you are your business. So a lot of it is all related. So we want to make sure as a whole that the loan can get repaid, and that you aren't going to struggle having to choose between paying personal debts and the loan, the business loan. So that's why we're looking at that. And having that, again, if you're a startup business, we're going to be looking for that business plan and financial projections. But the reason why that secondary source of income I mentioned is so important for a startup is because we can't rely just on financial projections to support the loan and support your household, because ultimately we don't know for sure that that's going to happen. So we want to see that you have that backup secondary source of income that's going to help support your existing debts. For character, so character is more of, it's not really tied to a number, but it's, will you pay? Are you being transparent with history of what it's looked like? Have you paid in the past? What is your industry experience and relevant education? It's really key for us in a startup that you have direct industry experience, that you've worked in that management capacity, or really have strong industry experience for that type of business. And that should be something that you really communicate through your business plan. And then having that transparency through the loan process allows us to better educate you and help you through along the way, and go from there. And then the final two are contribution and collateral. So your contribution is money that you have available to put in. So if you are starting a business, the lender does not want to take on 100% of the risk for themselves. So we like to see that you have 25% of your own money available to put in towards the business. So if you're working on getting the business up and running and you're paying for things as you go, keep track of that, because that can go towards your contribution. If you are buying a business acquisition, it's still going to be considered a startup in the eyes of the lender because it's under new management and ownership. However, having those seller tax returns for the last 3 years helps take the risk off a little bit, because we can track how that business has done, if they've done well. It also helps us to determine, is the value that you're buying, the price that you're buying the business for, supported by, the historical performance. So does the value make sense for the business you're buying? With the business acquisition, we require a minimum down payment of 10%, as does the SBA 7A loan program. So we do want to see that you have 10% of your own money down for the business acquisition. And then for the 504 program, if you're buying the building, a minimum of 10% down. If you are a startup business, so if you have less than 2 years of a financial history, or if you're buying a property that's considered on the SBA list as a special use property, then the SBA will require an additional 5% down for you for either of those. So if you're a startup business, your down payment would be 15%. If you're a startup business and you're opening, say, a gas station or a hotel motel or a bowling alley, which are all special use properties, your down payment would then be 20%. We don't see that happen often, but that is what the program requires. And if you're an existing business looking for, say, a working capital loan or a, for equipment, whatever it may be, we can, in that case, provide 100% financing because you already invested in your business. So if you are looking, say you own a bakery and you are looking to get a walk-in cooler or a big conventional oven, we can potentially provide 100% of the financing for that. But it depends on the program in the industry, what you need the money for, and every lender will have their own requirements of what they need to see for your down payment. So those are all questions that you also want to ask. And last but not least, we have collateral. So collateral is the asset that you're pledging to help support the loan. So number one thing we want to see in a loan is that there's cash flow or repayment. So we're a cash flow lender. Most banks are cash flow lenders. So they want to see that there's active repayment coming in. But the collateral is really that second source to give it a little bit more comfort level. For our loan programs, we are looking to take a lien on a personal residence for all of our small loan program. So that includes microloans. So if there's a home, we're required to take a lien. If you don't own a home and you don't have the ability to pledge a home or a rental property or a commercial property for collateral, then we can potentially make an unsecured loan up to $15,000 where we would just take business assets. We wouldn't have any real property to take a lien on. So that just limits what we can do. If you're a well-established existing business, or if it's a business acquisition and you don't own a home, we have the ability to get a 7(a) guarantee. And that would take some of the risk off, because ultimately SBA guarantees a portion of the loan depending on the loan amount. And so usually we'll utilize that program if we're looking at a well-established business that has a higher, that needs a higher amount above the 15,000. Ashley, do you mind just going back 1 second? Oh, so I just wanted to touch on, I covered most of that, but if you're buying a commercial property, so SBA 504 loan, we would look to take that second lien on the property behind the bank for collateral. We typically don't take a personal residence on an SBA 504 loan unless it's a very unique circumstance. For our small loan program, that, we can provide financing for real estate as well. We have the same parameters where we'll take a second lien on the property. Your down payment is 10%. Sometimes if it's a startup business looking to buy a building, we may take a lien on the personal residence if it's a little bit riskier, just because we're in that second position. But it's really a case-by-case basis. Usually if we have maybe a lower credit score, something's a little bit more risky, we'll opt to do that. You can go ahead to the technical assistance. So that's a wrap on our loan programs. Like I said, really, straightforward. We're just doing term loans for businesses, anything from $1,000 microloan to a $5.5 million SBA 504 loan. So if you need financing, we'll have a contact at the end here that you can reach out to myself or Ashley and find out about the loan programs available. Whether it's us or, starting with your bank, you always want to just know how much you need for financing, right? That's really important. We can't determine that for you. And if you don't know how much you need, it's really hard for us to gauge which program it would be a good fit for. So you want to go through that exercise and either have your business plan together, or if you're an existing business, take a look. If you're looking to buy equipment, have you researched it? What is, do you have quotes and estimates for that? If you're buying a building, do you have a purchase and sales agreement? Do you have to do renovations to the building? So there's a lot of factors, but it's most helpful for a lender when you've done your research ahead of time and you can come to us and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 100,000. I need 50,000 for working capital and say 50,000 for equipment. This is why, this is how it will help my business. And that will give us a better idea, at the forefront if we can assist. So with that being said, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the lending side, we do have technical assistance is a big part of what we do. Like I mentioned, we have resource partners. So if we can't help you, we're always trying to connect you with the resource partners locally in Mass and Rhode Island, who can help you with your business plan, projections. If you're looking to register your business, the Secretary of State website. If you're looking for alternative financing, Commerce is a great resource as well. So there's a lot of different resources available. The Rhode Island Business Coalition is tied to so many different small business lenders or organizations. So just knowing that you have that group of people to reach out to that can help you, and just kind of understanding where to start, and we can help you to do that. We do hold a monthly entrepreneurial workshops. We will pick those back up in September. We don't hold them in July and August, but there's 2 sessions. And usually they're in person, and we invite our resource partners to come. They're usually sponsored by one of our banking partners. We talk about the business plan, like high-level overview of what goes into a business plan. We talk about in more detail those C's of credit that I just went over about obtaining financing. So what seed looks for, what a traditional bank looks for, in some marketing items. And then in the second session, we talk about understanding business financials. So that includes profit and loss for your business, balance sheet, cash flow statements, and then your personal financial statement. And then just, again, general connection with all of our resource partners through SBA and through the state. So And I know Doris just put her contact information. She's on here from Commerce RI. Thank you for joining, Doris. Her contact information is in the chat as well. So they're a great resource for our Rhode Island businesses. And I have my contact information in here, and Ashley, if you follow this QR code, that brings you right out to our website. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to let Dan go, Dan Horowitz from the SBA, if he wants to piggyback or anything about his programs, and then we'll turn it over to Kaitlyn. And Dan, if you don't mind just talking about your newsletter too, and asking, telling people about, if you sign up for the newsletter, the benefits of having, access of kind of encompassing everything that's available through SBA.
Okay, thanks. Well, as Angie said, yeah, sign up for a newsletter. It's usually a weekly newsletter that goes out. Did you know, as well as the regular programs that go out, and it gives information about the availability of SBA trainings and various programs that we do. Pardon me one second. That we do throughout the state. They are focused on Rhode Island. We do have other states, other office states, and they have their own newsletter. So for instance, if you happen to live or work in Mass and you want to attend classes up there, that's a possibility as well. Connecticut, I believe, has, I guess they have stuff. No, they do. I just don't like giving them any opportunity. Anyway, Angie covered it pretty well, pretty 100% as I knew she would. I didn't provide any slides because I knew that this would be the case. To be easy and simple, since I'm talking and not can give you a bunch of facts and figures and numbers, SBA is here to help entrepreneurs and small businesses thrive. What that means is we're here to support, or we're not here to do everything for you. All right. That can come in a variety of avenues. We're talking about financing today, but as Angie said, SBA provides grants to groups like CDC so they can make microloans. We also perform other services guaranteeing the loans. The 504 loans she mentioned, we underwrite those to seed. So what that means is they can take risks that banks and credit unions might not otherwise make on real estate deals, on heavy equipment deals. They can also make 7A loans that wouldn't be otherwise made. We also engage with banks and credit unions to do the same thing. What that normally means is if you have a relationship with a bank or credit union, as Angie said, you go to them, you work with them, you obtain a commercial loan, and yes, you may get a no. Look, I'm one of the few people that's worked in SBA multiple years that's had, I haven't always worked for SBA. I've had my own businesses elsewhere in the country. I've crashed and burned. I've sold one. I've exited one to go take another job because I got hired out of it. There's lots of different ways you can have a business and lots of ways you can succeed and fail. And you're going to get a no. The question is, if you're going to hear no and go away, tuck tail and run, or if you're going to say, gosh, it's not no, it's either maybe not that way, or maybe instead of no, it's not right now. And hey, it's not how you want to do it right now. Let's talk about how you can achieve it. And when you talk to a bank or credit union, you're going to get a no more often than not when you're a startup. I mean, I don't know, Kaitlyn, can you nod or shake your head? Did you get a yes right away when you first went to a bank?
I did, but I went at year 17. So I had a lot more but it's a good point, because I had a lot more pushback with my line of credit than I did with my, because that's not collateralized. Right. So, and that was when, and I was like 12 years in business then. And so I think that underscores the importance of your relationship with your lender. So like, I think that when Angie said that, that's really important to even if you have a really small business, like you're going to need a bank. You have to have a bank. So like building that relationship and them being able to see that history is really important. but I didn't ask, you know, I didn't try to own a building because I knew it was a no for me before I even brought it, you know, to market. But I would assume had I asked at year 12, I would have got a lot of no's.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that relationship that both Angie and Kaitlyn mentioned, a relationship, you know, most of the time when you're a small business owner, you go to a bank, you're like, and this is how I felt when I first went to a bank or credit union, both to get a line of credit to do things. Like you know, it's kind of like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have a loan? And that's not how it is. It's how we feel, but it's not how it should be. You need to flip the script. You need to be able to have that relationship, not just with a branch manager or business relationship manager, the person, you know, branch managers are nice people. They're fantastic people. Okay. I was just in my local credit union last weekend talking about whether I wanted to get a car loan there or go through the dealership. Right. And because I had a relationship with a branch manager, it was a conversation. Right. And they can help with that. But when it comes down to commercial loans, it's good to talk to a commercial loan officer at your bank or your credit union. And it's not a one-time, one and done thing. You need to understand that when you pay interest, when you pay all these fees, it's just like having a lawyer or a CPA on retainer. You need to flip the script and realize they are your consultant and you're paying them through your fees. So it may be a no right now, but they can help you get to yes. And honestly, before you go to Angie and Seed and you get a microloan, you have to get a no from them, right, Angie?
Yeah, so we require that bank to decline for any request over 20,000 because we don't want to compete with the banks. We're here to work as a partner. And you should always be having that conversation first with your bank, right? Even if you need a smaller microloan, if they can do it, that's probably where you want to be. And you want it, like I said, you want to keep that ongoing relationship. And I know sometimes it can be overwhelming to know, what do you need? Do you need a line of credit? Do you need a term loan? I think that's where it goes back into when you sit with your lender, being able to tell us what you need the money for. And then we can advise you, a line of credit makes more sense, a term loan makes more sense, and just kind of put you in that direction. So that's why it's so important for you to know. It's really hard for us to help if you come and say, I don't know how much I need, or how much can you give me for financing? That can be a real struggle. And we don't really like to hear that because we can't tell you how much you need. You know your numbers, you know what you're looking to do, you know what your trajectory is. So if you are looking to get assistance with determining how much you need for financing, you want to meet with the resource partners to sit down with you. There's SCORE and SBDC available through SBA. There's other resources too in Rhode Island. Like I said, Doris put her contact in for Commerce, the Rhode Island Business Coalition, just knowing who to reach out to. And also the Rhode Island Secretary of State website is very, very helpful. They have a actual unique business services sector that a lot of Secretary of States don't have, but they can. So many useful resources and tools. They can give you a checklist of what to do first when you're trying to get started, or if you're growing your business, whatever it may be. So they're not just a go on to register your business, but they also provide those other services. So it's super helpful. And you know, our hope is that if you get a bank decline from your traditional bank, that they know to refer you out to other resources, but that's not always the case. So we try to, you know, have as many connections with the local banks and commercial lenders that Dan was mentioning, but also to make the small businesses aware of the services available in case that's not provided to them when they hear that no. Right. And don't be afraid to ask why, you know, what can I work on? Or ask the lender if they have any other resources to send you to as well. But, you know, you can always reach out to the SBA district office and ask for connections as well. And, you know, obviously now you have our contact information, but it's just a matter of educating people on what services are available, because we find there's usually a pretty big disconnect of people saying, well, I just didn't know that this existed. So that's really what we're here to educate you guys on today too.
That was the only other part I was going to go to, is the resource partners, SCORE and the SBDC. You can come to our website, sba.gov/RI. You can find the local contacts for our outside resource specialists, outside resources. Our resource partners are fantastic. The way I like to say it is the homework. When Angie was talking about all these different financials you can need, this list of stuff, all the research you're gonna have to put together in your binder, the SBDC counselors and these SCORE mentors can help you do that homework, gather your materials, get it in order, help you rough out a budget and a business plan. You're not going to have a Harvard MBA, no one's expecting to have that report done, but you do need to know what your rough budget is, so you know actual numbers of what you're going to use the funds for, use of proceeds. That's a big factor on your loan application. So all these things can be done. You can go to your bank or credit union, get the list and feel kind of panicked that you need to get them all the information real quick, or you can do your homework ahead of time by working with the resource partners. That's it for me.
And just know that all of these business services, whether you're in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, they're all available to you. If you aren't in the chat, go into the chat, because we included the link to the SBA's website for each district office, assuming everybody here is probably Rhode Island, Mass, or Connecticut. And then there's other resources in there as well. So just check that out so that you can, save those websites as well. But Dan, if you don't have anything else, I'm going to turn it over to Kaitlyn and let her kind of speak on her experience, and then we'll just open it up for questions in a few minutes. So Kaitlyn, thank you. And thank you.
One more thing, Ange.
Yep.
Kaitlyn's a fantastic example. She was our 2025 Small Business Person of the Year. Let's just acknowledge that.
It's here for us. I mean, I can talk all day long about the programs and what's available, but when you hear from a business owner directly, it's so helpful to hear of like things that worked, that didn't work. And I just feel like it's such a nice perspective to add. So Kaitlyn, thank you so much for joining us. I know that you're involved in a lot in Rhode Island as well, being involved on the Rhode Island Business Coalition. So I will turn it over to you and let you take it from here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angie. I think I was one of those people that didn't know that SEED existed, but found out about it through my banker. It wasn't for a decline at that time. I was trying to purchase a building that we were going to build out a larger commissary, and I own a catering company. Our commissary was like 800 square feet, and now we've built one out that's 4,000 square feet, which we really needed, which had we weren't going to build that anywhere. We were going to lease, because I can't take most of my equipment with me when I do that. And we were a little different because we went through COVID, and then I had like this savings amount of money that I was able to like save through that. So we self-funded some of our build out, but SEED came in and was able to, just like Angie said, they picked up, I want to say, either 30% or 40% of our debt, and thank God I picked up the rest. I did put 10% down. The rate, because it's as she said, is a collateralized building, was great. It's like 6 flat. So in this market, who's getting 6 flat? Nobody's getting that. And then my bank was not 6 flat, but but they're great to work with. We go back and forth like a little bit on certain things. I would say like being really sure like that what you need that money for. Obviously, a building is a building, but also being really sure that you feel like you're going to be able to pay it back is going to help convince other people of that as well. And I meet a lot of people that just think that they need a building because they need a building, but it's a large sum of money. It's a lot to take on. So figuring that out. And in our case, the amount of money that we're now paying over there for a mortgage, unfortunately, I'm still sitting in my lease paying for both, which is also a problem. So think about that. Was less than we were paying for our lease. So that helped us be able to go to both the bank and SEED and say, hey, our lease here is $6,000 a month. Our mortgage over there is going to be $3,500, even with these like high rates. Okay. Well, what about like increased utilities? What about all these kinds of things? So this stuff that we talked through, put into the plan of sorts, whatever they needed, we got over to them. I found it to be less arduous than buying a house. So if there's been anybody that owns a small business that has bought a house, they act like you are a federal criminal. I don't know if anybody's like been through that, but they don't like, mortgage brokers don't like small business owners on houses, to the point where like I lost so much patience that I was like, I'll be on the deed, and I made my husband finance the loan because I didn't have patience for that. So I found it to be much more straightforward, organized. The people at Seed are super efficient. The people at my bank, I use Bank RI. I have to shout them out. And I had an experience, and I think it might be worth noting, with another bank, which I won't name, that I did my first loan for here. And that was a renovation of a leased building. So it's like, who wants to finance that? But I needed it. And we did that with this other bank. And it was during that process that I realized, I was like, I don't really feel like they like know enough about my business model. I don't really feel like they give a shit about my business model. And I think I'd like for someone to give a shit. So I would say find somebody that is willing to, listen to you. This was at year 12. I knew we'd made it over the hump. I knew we were going to do other things. And so interview your banker. Like what I did was I had 5 come down, and I was like, come meet me and tell me like why I should move our funds over to your bank. And they did. And Bank RI picked up that old debt from the other bank at a better rate. This is back when rates were like 1% or 2%. They also then were like, Kate, you're good. They were the ones that were like, yeah, because you're so seasonal, which we are. We have like a really slow off season, January through March. How are you funding that? How are you paying payroll? And I was like, well, we save money from here and we have it for there. And she's like, well, maybe consider a line of credit, and this is how it works and all that kind of stuff. She educated me on that with my banker and my commercial lender over there long before we got to the building part. So she was able to say, hey, Kate's had a lease. She's paid her lease back. I have history of repayment on my lease here. I have history of repayment on my line of credit. I have history of money going into the bank and coming out of the bank. And none of this has to be huge amounts of money. But I think the most important thing is that you trust the business and you know the business is going to work, and you are able to convey that to the people that are lending you money. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, you'd want to know that person wasn't a wackadoo, is what I'd like to say about lending. Dan, I
Banks,
think.
yeah, banks really want to fight. Banks credit unions,
Yeah.
they want to fight for your money. So that's what your experience that you had is once you get into it and you're willing to talk to banks and you flip that script, like I said, they are so aggressive on trying to get your business. They want your monthly deposits, so they will bend over backwards. And the loan officers, they move from bank to bank to bank. Now they have a non-compete clause, but after 6 months, they're gonna be like, "Hey, buddy, remember I was your best friend? Come on over and bring your deposits with you," because they get more credit for that. They love that. So, like I said, use them as your consultant. Thanks.
Yeah, and I really like the point of that that you brought up, because even if, so say, Kaitlyn, you went to your bank, and you had your good relationship with Bank RI in year 3, and you said, hey, I need, $50,000 for working capital. And they said, well, we really can't do this right now. But they referred you to someone like Seed to get a loan. This happens often. And then like our goal is to make you bankable, but having that ongoing relationship, now that you have that with Bank RI, it kind of opens your eyes to what it should look like. Because over the years, even if they're not ready to give you financing, or they'll tell you and they understand your seasonality, they understand your business operations, and that, like with the line of credit situation, they can advise you, hey, this would be helpful for you. You shouldn't be pulling from here and there. You should get a line of credit. But that's really should be their role. So interviewing and having that long-term relationship with your lender really is key. And that's just really a huge point to drive home, I think, with the success of your business, because, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, or having that outside perspective, instead of like, if you needed a line of credit, Kaitlyn, and you just walked into a random bank that maybe you had just done deposits with, but didn't have any relationship on the commercial side, it's definitely more likely that you would get declined, because they maybe just don't understand something. If someone's in the weeds with you and they understand, it's a lot more likely that you'll get that help when you need it.
Exactly.
They can run those numbers. They can go click, click, click. They can answer this question. It's really hard for most people to be able to go, well, okay, the percentage of the loan at this much, that means how much my monthly payments are going to be. What if I got a line of credit versus a term loan and the rate goes down by half a point? That's a $40,000 debt. How much does that actually mean for a monthly return? And then you can either do all the work with Google and AI, or you can have a conversation with somebody who's going to be able to, you're going to trust. That's the trust factor. Takes a while for you. Now you have it. Like, are you going to Bank RI and going, hey, let's grab coffee. Let's just chat.
Now that I have it, she retired is the moral of that story. Nancy retired. And I just texted her, I'm on an island without you. Where are you? And she, no, but they'll hand me over to somebody else that'll be equally as great. But that's the trust is important when you're looking, if you think about a building or you think about even a hard money loan, like a lump sum of money, right? Like you're thinking about, okay, what's that payment? Can I cover that? What am I currently paying? To be able to run that by somebody to make sure that that's within the bandwidth of what you can pay back is really important.
Hey, you can afford this much per year, but just because you can't afford this much, you should borrow this much.
Totally.
Because that allows you, like the rainy day fund, your working capital amount, the little extra to make you comfortable, and maybe give yourself a bonus at the end of the year. So you're not pulling your hair out. You don't want to be where I was when I crashed out of one of my businesses where, I'm looking around, I'm like, my doctor's like, how are you coping with the stress? Self-medicating, glass of red wine to calm down, and a pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream to solve the acid reflux every day. You don't want to be there.
Creative.
Cholesterol.
Interesting combination, Dan.
Not at the same time.
Yeah, that's right.
But you got to do these things, but having that relationship, you can have these conversations that are loose and relaxed, and you're not going, pulling what little hair, I don't have any hair out, and that's why. You want to be able to have the conversations so you don't have this stress. You can go, okay, what can I afford? These numbers, I don't know, how big's the building I can't afford versus the building I should be able to, is that going to be enough for what I need? Or do I need to wait a year? All these things. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
that's right.
Super helpful.
And I
think,
think,
do you have anything else you wanted to add on to that before we ask for questions? I know we're at like 12:55, but we have a little bit of time left. So I don't want to. No,
I was just going to say, Seed offers, and I think this is really clear too, like what Seed offers versus banks, and that although there is crossover, they don't necessarily compete with each other. I think that's important. I would encourage people to join Rhode Island Small Business Coalition and other organizations like that, use SBDC because there are free resources there to help. And I think that's important in today's world, to connect with other people, because entrepreneurship can be a little isolating. And I think it's nice to know, like, you can reach out to Angie and say, hey, like, I need to get a walk-in. Is this the thing you do? Do you know somebody else that does it? They all know each other so well and really can point you in the right direction.
I'm still muted, but I said yes, absolutely. And it's just a matter of not feeling like you have to do it alone. There are so many resources and professionals. In addition to just the resource partners, keep in mind that you always want to have a great small business accountant and an attorney as well in your circle of influence to help you go through it. So but with that, thank you guys so much, Kaitlyn, Dan, Stefan, I appreciate it. Do we have any questions? Do you want to raise hands or put them in the chat? I'm happy to answer questions, or if you have questions for Kaitlyn or Dan or Stefan. And if you think of questions, if you don't have anything now, I don't see any hands raised or questions in the chat. Like I said, check out the chat. There's a lot of great resources in there of who to call, contact information for us are on the slide, and there's some in there as well for Commerce and for Dan for their email address and phone number. But if you have any questions after the fact, sometimes once you soak everything in, you end up thinking of something that you have. So feel free to reach out to us. Oh, do have a question from Jeremiah, but you have all of our contacts. So please reach out and ask questions, even if it's after the fact.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
So I know, going to banks and whatnot, but if you're part of other organizations that do something similar like this, like partner with local financial institutions for SBA programs. Do you just commit to one and then they reach out to several banks, or does it matter if you're going if you're going through other, like I know you shop around for like the local bank part of it, partner, but if you're going to be partnering with like Seed, do you just stay with Seed? Or is it something similar, like it's just like a type of financial institution? I don't know if I'm being clear.
Yeah, so all the banks and credit unions have their own loan programs. So they have conventional, they have SBA programs. So they all have their own. If you're looking at non-traditional lenders, there's a couple of micro lenders in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts. There's other non-traditional programs as well that are not the bank or credit union. So if you're looking to buy a building, we don't require a bank decline first. You could come to us first and then we can help to connect you with a bank if you didn't have one that you wanted to work with. That's typically what we'll do. But if you're looking for any other type of loan over 20,000, you want to talk to your bank first. And if they can't help, that's when you would come to Seed. So if you are, I guess I just need a little bit of clarification. Like, are you working with another non-traditional lender that's similar to us? Is that
No,
the
I just
question?
my question was just in general before you start the process. Like, if you went to two different non-conventional lenders, would they be like, "Oh, you're already working with C, just stay with them because you guys all communicate," or is it like
Oh, I see.
you might turn it a certain situation down and another non-conventional lender doesn't? So do you still go to
Right.
different non-conventional lenders even though they're going to
Good, for
the same
sure.
bank?
Yeah. I mean, similar to a bank, there's obviously there's a handful of us, right? There's not as many as you have for banks or credit unions, but at the end of the day, if you can't get that traditional bank financing and you want to reach out to a few different non-traditional lenders, sure, because likely it may fit, same for us as it is for the banks. We all have different credit boxes, credit minimums, cash flow, industries. So yeah, I mean, if there's other non-traditional lenders, you want to talk to everyone and see what you think is the best fit for you. And then go from there. Obviously, you don't want everybody running credit, but you can have those initial conversations to say, what are you looking for? What would be a good fit? So yeah, you certainly can do that. And I think it makes sense to figure out, if one lender's looking for, a lien on the house and the other isn't, and you're really not comfortable with that, you want to do what you're comfortable with. Like I said, there's only a handful of us out there, so there's not that many to talk to. But I think it's always worth finding the right fit for you.
And then my second part of that question is, are different non-conventional lenders industry specific? So like if you went to Seed and you were, in the hospitality industry, they would say, oh no, there's another one that specializes in those type of, because they have experience with those type of financial situations, or is everybody open to every industry?
Typically, so every lender can be different. Sometimes I find more on the bank side that there may be a bank that doesn't love the restaurant industry, or maybe they've lent too much in the hospitality industry where they can't lend anymore. So usually if a lender can't do it, like for us, we can do any and all industries except for nonprofits. We can do nonprofit childcare centers, but otherwise we can't lend to nonprofits. But sometimes you'll find that whether it's a non-traditional lender or a traditional lender, if there's an industry they may not love to do, they may connect you with another lender that, they know will do it. A lot of banks will do that. They'll still send you to a competitor if they're not lending to that industry or that's not really their cup of tea. Like some banks are really known for doing hotels. Some won't touch any restaurants or anything in the food industry. A lot of banks won't do startups at all unless there's a 2-year financial history. So usually the lender will try to connect you with somebody else. Most are open to all industries, but some of them do specialize in one versus the other.
Right. But you don't see that on the advertisements and billboards on 95. You're not going to see any of that. So honestly, what I tend to find is the SBDC counselors are really fantastic with that. When they go through the process with you, with counseling you, helping you get your paperwork in order, they can help direct you. And the Rhode Island thing is, I know a guy, right? They know people who those banks and credit unions that are lending in that industry at this point in time, right? Because sometimes it's not that they won't necessarily lend to this industry or that industry. they have industry boxes in their credit box that, gosh, we've done a lot of loans to restaurants in the past quarter, past year. Let's slow that down and not focus on restaurants so much. But if you're an existing client that does good deposits, they're still going to do a loan to you because you're a trusted client and they don't want a long-time client and they don't want you going to a competitor. But, you know, there are pros and cons to it all, as Angie said. So, yeah.
Mhm. Does that answer your questions, Jeremiah?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. And we did have a question in the chat about, you know, potentially being out of work for a couple of years due to an injury. So in terms of being able to, for startup funding, we can consider disability income, but we'd like to see that there's a little bit of a history there before we do it. We also need to know, usually we'll ask for proof of it and we'll ask for how long you'd be collecting it, like if it's only a year, if there's an end time for that. But keep in mind that if you are starting up, in addition to looking at your income, if you have a spouse or a partner that's helping to support the household, we can also use their income as well. The big thing for us is, you know, we're not looking at just one thing. All those C's that we talked about, you know, it's great that you have good credit, but we also, our number one thing is repayment. So if we can't show active repayment, it's really hard for us to move forward. You know, if, like I said, if the credit score is on the lower end, but we know that there's been good payment history in the last 2 years, sometimes we can be more likely to be able to advocate and make a case for that. So every situation is a little bit different. You could potentially have a co-signer that's a non-partner that could help support the household in the loan while it gets up and running. We'll call it a guarantor. So it will depend on what the relationship is, but we can potentially consider that as well. The big thing, like I said, for startups, what's your industry experience? Have you been paying bills? You know, what do we have for projections going forward? But those are potential options. I did put in the chat the link to our Get Started, which if you fill that inquiry out, it's not an application. It won't trigger anybody to run credit. It's not an application, but it gets emailed to myself and Ashley, who's on the call, and we'll reach out to schedule a time to discuss with you our programs and your specific situation. So I did put that in the chat as well. Does anyone else have any questions? I know we're 5 minutes over, just to be timely and keep everybody on track. I'm happy to answer. Oh, Jeremiah?
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And I just had a question. How long is the process between starting and closing for the different programs? Like, what can you expect?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say for our small loan program, when there's no real estate involved, or if we're not going to SBA, small microloans, it's typically 45 to 60 days. It depends on how, that's from a complete application to closing, but it depends how quickly, like how responsive the borrower is when we ask questions or getting us the documents we need. So for example, if we're in the process of underwriting, we have a bunch of questions and it takes a couple weeks for you to get back to us, we're kind of at a holding point. So it depends on the communication both ways and how quickly it can go. For real estate transactions or SBA, it's usually 60 to 90 days. I would say that 90 days is on the longer end, but we account for our approval, SBA's approval, the bank's approval, environmentals, appraisals. So again, a lot of it is relying on, you know, we can't start to do our review. That window doesn't really start till we get that complete application from you and we can run credit and start looking at everything. And then how responsive you are on the back end of getting us any outstanding documents or answering questions that we need. So, but that's typically the time frame for us.
That's what I mentioned doing. That's homework. So if you do your homework before with I'll say it again and again and again. If you do your homework before with an SBDC counselor or score and mentor, you'll have most of that material in hand and it'll be in order so that when you go and talk to someone like Angie, you know, they can open the binder and go, gosh, oh, so-and-so helped you with this. Oh, that's great. And they know every question they have will be answered. You'll be prepared with most of the materials, if not all the materials. So it really helps the process move forward.
And that's why we like to have the conversation up front too. So number one, if there's something glaring that makes it so that we know for sure we can't move forward at this time, we like to let you know as soon as possible. We don't want to drag you through the process if we know for sure there's something that we can't, that's going to prevent us from moving forward. Now, we get a lot of applications in that we can't move forward with. But, that's just part of it. For us, we try to do our best to have those conversations and make you aware. But when we talk to you, if it sounds like something we can look at, we'll send you a detailed list of what you need to submit the application. So it's very straightforward. There's a lot of items. It's a lot of paperwork, but we try to make it as easy as possible, specifically what we're requesting, attach any documents that we need you to complete, and then request those from you. So we do send you a very detailed list of what we need so that you don't have to guess of like what we're going to be looking for. So any last questions, just so that we can wrap up and you guys can go along with your day? All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm glad that it's so nice to have the different perspectives on here. Any questions at all, please reach out to our team, SBA, Coalition, Commerce RI, and then Ashley also put in contact for SBDC and SCORE in the chat. But please reach out, and if you don't know who to reach out to, we can help to put you in that direction. So I will close out from that if nobody else has any questions.